all, but Eddie wanted to make it a surprise.
Yeah. You surprised?
Surprised, Eddie? If I woke up tomorrow with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am right now.
We have had a great time this month talking about Christmas lights, spreading the light of hope, the light of love, the light of joy today. And Pastor Adam will speak this weekend on the light of peace. And the truth is, you may be trying to do that, but everybody, have you noticed everybody doesn't receive what you try to give to them? Like we're down to the last week of Christmas, you know what I'm saying? Just be careful as you're on the road this week, especially on the weekend. People get crazy. I mean, they're all over the place. And I mean, you have probably been through this. I've been through this. I can get along with most people, but, you know, since I'm over here, Adam is the only other person that you know from the church I came from in Indiana, but there was a person in that church I had trouble with. Just talk about it for a minute. There are some people, there's a book called years ago called You're a Regular Person, a person you just can't please. It's almost like no matter what you do, they are so self-centered, it's just hard to connect with them, okay? And I've watched this guy over the years, and he does a lot of good things, by the way, in the life of the church, which is what's perplexing about it. But honestly, his motives, I think, are selfish. And I'm certainly not going to mention his name here, but to make things worse, he's actually a leader in the church. Can you guess who it is? No, it's not Adam. It's me. I am really selfish. I do a lot of things out of selfishness. And the Apostle Paul wrote from a prison cell. Anybody could have been obsessed with himself and how bad things were turning on him. And he wrote this in Philippians chapter 2. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. And I don't know about you, every time I read that verse, I go, man, I got a long way to grow. I've been around the faith my whole life. I've got a long way to grow to get there because I can't say that I never do anything out of selfishness. How about you? I played all sports, but basketball is the one I played the longest in college. And in the 60s, I used to love to watch UCLA play basketball. John Wooden from Indiana, Martinsville, Indiana, was the best coach in the history of basketball. They won like 8 national championships out of 9 years. They're kind of like Alabama now on football, kind of make you sick, you know what I'm saying? But they won it like 8 out of 9 years. And John Wooden was a wonderful Christian man, by the way, an active member of the Shepherd Community Church, Christian church, where my pastor friend Dudley Rutherford's pastor. He had his funeral just a couple of years ago. John Wooden lived to be over 100 years of age, John Wooden did. He was a godly man, but he was a tremendous coach. And he had a player everybody talked about. He was going to be the great, phenomenal player. His name was Sidney Wicks. And I just watched that guy play. But his freshman year, he wasn't getting much playing time. And everybody kept talking about the potential when he would take the floor. And one time he walked into Coach Wooden's office. He said, I'm going to transfer from the school. Now, you hear about that all the time today, where people will transfer so I could get more playing time somewhere else, right? He's not getting playing time. And he said, Coach, you and I just don't see eye to eye. And John Wooden said, well, Sidney, I got to tell you something. We're not going to see eye to eye until you learn how to spell. He said, I'm in college. I got accepted at UCLA. I know how to spell. He said, no, you don't. There is no I in UCLA. Now, coaches know that. And God knows that as well. There's no I-N-C-H-U-R-C-H, is there? It's about the church. It's about the kingdom. And so Paul describing this Jesus who came to earth, God in flesh, how we're to not only be rescued by him from our sin, but we're to follow him as our model and our attitude. He said in verse 4 of chapter 2, that same passage, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. Now the Bible's realistic, notice, an interest in others too. In other words, you have to be interested in yourself. You wouldn't have gotten yourself presentable today otherwise, right? You have to take an interest in yourself and how you present yourself. But it's not only about your interest. It's not only about you. It's about being interested in other people. Beth Moore really challenges us when she says, you need to look into the mirror until all you see is Jesus. That's easy to say. That's really hard to do. Well, what a good goal to look in there and say, God, I want to see Jesus somehow in that mirror. And it's really hard to see with the way I look in the morning. You know what I'm saying? So you look in the mirror and there it is. But so wait a minute, Jesus is in there somewhere. And you need to see Jesus in there. And Lord, help people to see Jesus in me today. Now, if you will, turn in your Bibles to Philippians chapter 2. I've cited it a couple of times. That's where we're going to primarily camp today. Adam's going to be walking you through Luke chapter 2 next weekend on the Christmas story itself. But we're going to talk today about Philippians chapter 2 primarily because the Apostle Paul expands on who Jesus Christ really was. This baby was not just a baby. He was God in flesh. And in verse 6 and 7, the Apostle Paul from a prison cell wrote these words. Though he was God, this baby, Jesus Christ, who grew to be a man, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to, even though he was equal with God, God in flesh. Instead, he gave up his own divine privileges, and he took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. Okay? A human being. How many of you saw the funerals, they had a couple of them, of President H.W. Bush? How many saw that funeral or some of those funerals? It kind of took me back a bit. It made me grateful and also made me a little sad. Because George W. Bush, none of our presidents have been perfect, but I remember when he told Rick Warren, a pastor in California, that for all 8 years of his presidency, he began every single day with prayer to the Lord through Jesus Christ for 8 years in that job. And he admitted, he said, how hard is that to do? And he said, well, it takes discipline to try to do that, especially when everybody tells you you're the most powerful man in the world. It's pretty hard to be humble, put yourself before God. But he said, I realized I had to do that every single day. Now, thankfully, our current president, he has no trouble with humility at all. Now, let's not talk about him. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about me. Oh, yeah. It's easy to say, boy, they are just so selfish. It's that human nature, that sinful nature we talked about when we talked about some core beliefs a few years ago. We're born with this nature that says, I'll do it my way. It is all about me. And so because this is such a struggle, that's why I think the Bible talks so much about it. It's really a big deal. Because you see, what we're celebrating in this week together is that God set aside his throne of heaven to take on flesh and all that came with that in this life. The story you're going to look at this weekend, Luke chapter 2, verse 6 and 7 says, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, talking about the shepherds, of course. And then she, Mary, gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth, laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. So I really hope you will make sure you're here Saturday and or Sunday. Come and serve one service and come to a service. Bring guests to hear about the wonderful coming. It's going to be a very unique service. I promise you, you're going to be talking about this service. You've never experienced something like you're going to experience next weekend that's planned. So that's a coming attraction that we're not going to let you know about. I promise you, it'll be something like you've never experienced before. It will touch deeply any person, whether they know God or they don't know God, as we celebrate the coming of Christ, his light, his love into the world. So you make sure you bring some guests to hear about that next weekend. But let me say just a word about the Christmas story, because typically, let's just be honest, we envision this beautiful scene where Mary is there, and it's so nice and quiet and serene, right? And Jesus is quietly sleeping. I told you I went to our daughter's Christmas program last Sunday night in Nashville. Drove straight from here to her Christmas program, and a young mother held her own baby, and that baby was quiet in front of a couple thousand people. Couldn't believe it. We thought, well, of course, that's the way Jesus was, just quietly resting so serenely on a bed of hay. But I wonder what it was really like. Can we talk for just a minute? Mary was not given an epidural. You understand me here? Okay, this was a real deal. This was painful. It was very, very difficult. Jesus was not placed under a warm lamp. The hands were not sanitized that held him. They were the coarse hands of a carpenter. Okay? The Son of God is put in a feeding trough for animals. Now, God had a few days of history to plan this from the beginning of time. Why in the world would God choose for Jesus to be born in a place like that? The journey that took God from the throne room of heaven to this earth is a path that you and I need to take as well. From our little perch of comfort, whatever that is, to becoming a servant for the sake of somebody else, whatever that means. Not only my own interests, but it's all about the interests of other people. So others. When you think about this church, think about others. Many churches have a problem called ingrown eyeballs. Isn't that a funny picture? Ingrown eyeballs, or an insider culture. The church can be like a club where you just, we kind of know how we do things. Boy, the church needs to do things why do we put the scriptures on the screen? Because we hope every week somebody's here who doesn't even have a Bible. And we want them to be included. We don't want to do or say anything where somebody doesn't feel included. You heard Pastor Adam talk about, we're here to reach those who are lost, who need to be found. That's really why we exist. And so that journey of God putting aside what he wanted to reach other people in regard to what they're looking for, that's the DNA for this church. That's why Crossroads exists, to bring people to that place. So Jesus, think about this. He had the world at his feet, but he came to wash the feet of the world. He literally did it with his disciples. But say, okay, what does that look like? Well, let's look again at Philippians chapter 2. I quoted it earlier. Let me show it to you again. Philippians 2, verse 3. Don't be selfish. Say the word others every time we come to it. Don't try to impress. Be humble, thinking of as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in. Do you think there's a message there? It is to be about others. So let me keep it real simple today, because that's just all I can do. I told you how bad my grades were in the past. Let's just keep it right there. 2 little lessons today. Here's the first one. Do nothing, he says. I think the New International Version says, out of selfish ambition. Out of selfish ambition. So let me ask you, is that how it works at your house? Nobody does anything for themselves. It's all about pleasing everybody else. Y'all look so spiritual in church. Look down at your little kids and just how everybody's serving each other all the time. It's just so wonderful. You lie like a dog, if that's what you're saying. Come on, you know what it's about. In fact, when you go Christmas shopping, you got to make sure you're spending the same amount on every kid, aren't you? You better give them the same amount of presents, or somebody's not going to have a Merry Christmas. Mom and Dad, that would be you. We got to keep things even, because everybody's going to be saying, "Oh, wait a minute, how am I doing here?" Because that stuff goes on, always goes on. If you're newly married, you're going to be so glad you came today. I've given you a Christmas present today. If you're newly married, can I help you out a little bit this Christmas? If your spouse says to you, "Listen, let's not get anything for each other this year. And if we've got kids, let's just get something for the kids. Let's don't get anything for ourselves." Now, when she says you don't have to give me anything this year for Christmas, what she means is you don't have to. But if you don't, may God help you. If something is not in there with my name on it. So we don't have to give anything each other, but just understand what she means is that you need to get her something. That's really what it means. So just understand that that's the way it rolls, okay? Because we look out for ourselves, and it's not just her, it's every single one of us. And we learned this so early. You don't have to teach your toddler how to do this. Good news, you got a little boy who's almost a year old. You don't have to teach him any of this, Adam. He'll just know it, okay? He'll just know it. And once you have two kids, they just know it. They're going to fight to get in the front seat. Because if I don't get there first, my brother's going to get it. They're going to fight to get the first piece of cake, or I may not get any icing. I mean, you just kind of learn that's how you got to get by. If I don't take care of me, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to look out for my situation? It's our nature because we're nurtured. We were nurtured and we nurture that way. That's just what we do. We make sure that our rights are taken care of. Every single day it's about my rights. Everybody has a movement about me, right? Everybody has a movement about me. Everybody's needs matter, but I mean, it's so much out of the bag. It's every person for themselves. And so guess what? You bring that attitude into your new marriage. Isn't that fun? That's a formula for disaster. For instance, when the last time you got in the car, we're going to go out to eat. Where would you like to go out to eat? Oh, no, anywhere you like to go. Now, where do you want to go? And you say Mexican. She said, no, I don't like Mexican. I said, my wife, well, let's try Chinese. She said, no, that gives me gas. Or she says, that gives you gas. Let's give you gas, yeah. Hey, baby, how about Red Lobster? She said, no, I had fish sticks with the grandkids the other day. So finally, she says, let's get salads at Panera Bread. I got to choose where we're going to go out to eat. No, our choices aren't really choices, are they? No, that doesn't work that way. When you're in the family room and everybody's going to watch the same television. So what are we going to watch on TV? HGTV or ESPN? So as you walk in, who's going to get that remote control first in their hands? Men, don't be weak on this. Embrace it. The truth is, some of you are afraid to even laugh about it because you get in trouble. Hey, we got some vacation time, baby. Where do you want to go? The beach, the mountains? Chillicothe. See, how are we going to decide who wants to do what? It's all about me. I'm allergic to cats and dogs, feather pillows. And so our daughter moved to Nashville, Tennessee 12 years ago, and she got a new dog. She named her Penny Lane. And so I thought, well, isn't that nice? Danielle's single. She travels a lot. She's got this little dog to welcome her when she comes home. That's really nice. But then she came home for the first time and she actually brought Penny Lane into our house. Now, I'm allergic to dogs again, I mentioned. So my kids see this dog come into the house and they're going, what is up? Because Penny comes and she kisses on me and I let her lick all over this. She loves to lick this. I don't know why. I guess she sees Kristen do it all the time. I don't know why. Not really, but I'm getting deeper, aren't I? Okay. But that little precious little poodle comes to our house, and so I'll take some Benadryl because I love Penny Lane. She's now 9 years of age. Look at this picture of my grand dog. Now see, she is coming to our house for Christmas Friday. Now my daughter's coming too. But Penny Lane's going to come and love on me first. Because, dogs treat you like God even though you're not, right? You know what I'm saying? Oh, man. Why would you say, Dad, my oldest son says, Dad, I am messed up from my childhood. You refuse to give us a dog. And look at this. Look at this. Why am I putting up with that? Because that dog has been a great comfort for her now as a single adult traveling all over the place. And Penny, every time she comes, I say, can she just stay with us? It's the craziest thing that you'll do. Something you'll do in sacrifice or take something to get along with your kids or for a dog. But yet, what about other people? Okay? So take the picture down now. Let's talk about us. I'm talking about your coworker that you hear has said something about you that's not very nice. What's your plan? How are you going to respond? A neighbor just takes advantage of your kindness over and over and over again. You just get tired of it, really. Your spouse very rarely says something encouraging to you. What do? When you're supposed to treat this person with love and kindness, you're going to see him for Christmas. And I know they drive you, I know they're hard to live with, but be kind and be loving to this person here. Or, Pastor Adam says next weekend, you come and you be really gracious to people you don't even know. It's a scary world to be gracious to somebody you don't even know. Right? And so because of that, I think we hunker down and we're just kind of isolating ourselves. Do you understand? The incarnation, God in flesh, theologically is a whole different ballgame. But I'm talking for you and me, that's what it means. The incarnation means that we have the attitude that he has. That it's about other people and not so much just about us. That's the picture of sharing the light of joy to the world. That's what we're supposed to do. It is all about the attitude. So every time you whine and complain, just understand you've missed the mark. Romans 5:8 puts it this way. Hey man, God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. He didn't say get it together and then I'll forgive you. Good luck with that. You bring your mess to him and he cleans us up. And then we get in the mess again, and he dusts us up one more time, doesn't he? That's the love he has for us. And we should show people the same kind of love and patience that we expect God to show to us. You just expect he's always going to be there for you, and he is going to be. But you need to be the same for other people in your life. Notice how this section concludes, Philippians chapter 2. I love this. Verse 14. You need to underline this verse if you have your hard copy of your Bible with you. Do everything. Say everything. Everything. That was really weak sauce right there. Try it again. Do everything. Everything without complaining and arguing. So that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights. There we are, there's our theme, in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Hold firmly to the word of life. And that's lesson number 2. I'm going to ruin your week now. Do everything without complaining. Can you just do that between now and Christmas? That sounds easy. Some of you are going, 7 days, 8 days, seriously? Hey, just give it a shot. They tell us you do anything for 22 days straight, it becomes a habit. If for 22 days straight you develop an attitude of serving, it'll become second nature to who you are. And these words remind us of the Jewish believers we talked about a few weeks ago, how they complained. Remember, God set them free from slavery? Oh my goodness. Hey, God did amazing things, wonders and signs of the exodus of the people of God. But they're complaining the whole stinking time. You know what they complain about? I mean, hundreds of years they've been enslaved, but God sent them this miraculous food from heaven called manna. He parted the water so they could walk across on dry ground. He sent these supernatural plagues on the wicked people of Egypt. God gave them water from a rock. Are you kidding me? He gave them fire at night to guide them when it was dark. But yet they kept complaining about the leader they had, and they kept complaining about the food. Miraculous food from heaven. Now, leftovers do get old. Understand, all they had was manna day after day. So they're wanting to go back to be slaves again just to have the great food they had when they were slaves. Are you kidding me right now? What in the world is wrong with them? You ever see something like that? That's what they did. But can we talk about us in here for just a minute? We won't tell anybody. Let's just talk about us. God sent his son to save you and me from our sins. But yet we go through life often, and sometimes we're the worst at church. It's almost like people are supposed to tolerate it because it's a Christian environment. The theology of niceness. They got to put up with me being a grouch. They got to love me anyway because it's church. So it's very common for there to be whining and complaining in the church. Would you understand today, God sent his son to become a baby in all the vulnerability. You couldn't do anything without Christ. God sent his son for you. But God, my retirement fund's not working out the way I thought it was going to work out. God gave his son for you. But God, can I get a better job? I've been asking you for years. When are things going to turn around for us? Listen, God saved you from your sins. And so in this season, let this be a reminder of the way it's supposed to be 24/7. What God has given to us, we have nothing to complain about. I told you weren't going to like it. We really don't have anything to complain about. When we consider the generosity God has given to you and me, the giving of his son, why would we ever whine and complain in light of what God has done for us? My wife and I have been to Israel twice. On our trip to Israel, I'll never forget, this argument ensued on the plane, an intense argument. It kind of delayed us for about 20 minutes. There was this woman who determined she wanted 3 seats so she could lay down going across the water for a few hours. Traveling all night, and so they're having this big old intense argument about her finding her seats. It was crazy. And we're sitting there, we're going, what in the world? And I thought, here we are going to the Holy Land? And they're arguing about, well, just me, can just I have 3 seats, please? And holding everybody up because of that. But then I went, oh, wait a minute. I think I recognize that. You ever been to a junior basketball game? And see a little boy, a little girl miss a pass or a shot, and hear a dad or a mom yell, come on, dummy. Open your eyes. Look at the shot. Come on, hustle. Goodness gracious. If you have a car, you can drive your son or daughter to the game. You're in the 8% of the world that can do that. But yet you know how this works. Okay? You have a job probably that has allowed you to be off work to be able to come and worship here today. You have probably more than one copy of a Bible. There are many places, where people would do anything to have a copy of the scriptures in their hands. Back in the day, they had the Bible chained to the pulpit. It was in Latin, so they had to come to church to hear the word because they couldn't read it on their own. You can actually look at it on your own every single day. You can hear from God. But let that Bible sit by itself there. Man, you have a family. You've been given so many kinds of things. Have you ever been to church, on your way to church, and there's an argument between mom and dad on the way to church? Does that ever happen? Or kids in the back going at it? Now, it's funny to watch you guys because everybody's going like this in the room. You know how I know about this? Because my wife, for 43 years, I've watched her and she does all this stuff. Yeah, I've been here too long. You've now met us both. You know that. No, that's not true. No, I would be the one who would say to the car in front of me, please slow down. Don't cut me off. My kid never committed a foul in a basketball game his whole life. Okay? I know about this because I know about me. Do you understand? God, help me to back up and realize what Christ has done for us. It needs to change the way I do life and have a little better perspective about that. Okay? And just understand, when you meet the Lord, and there's all kinds of people that you know. I mean, I know this kind of thing goes on all the time, but you just look in the mirror. You're going to see you. Say, now, let me look till I see Jesus. Now, Lord, help me to act as Jesus would have me to act. And some of you are saying, but Steve, can I just get a pass for just a minute? I have cancer. My parents cheated me out of a childhood. If you just knew how painful Christmas is for me because of what happened in my childhood. Don't I have a right to complain? You know what? Our kids, we give and give and give. They just take us for granted. It hurts so bad. They're not even going to come this year. Won't even return my calls. Steve, my spouse had an affair. Our child has special needs. Steve, do you understand what we have to go through every day? Can I complain? We don't have enough money, frankly. You hear talk about Christmas. We don't have enough to buy presents for people in our lives. Can I complain? And it could be that you're in any number of those kinds of situations. But Paul writes from a prison cell, he's going to be killed for teaching about Jesus, he says, do everything without complaining. Paul, what are you talking about? I think he would take us to a manger and show us a town called Bethlehem and a baby sitting in a bed of hay with a bunch of animals. I think he would point to a young man who's totally disillusioned, didn't know what in the world is going on. His fiancée is pregnant and he's never been intimate with her. He finds out the truth, but nobody believes him. But he has to now decide he's going to care for that child. How does he deal with that? I think he would show you a young woman, maybe 15, 16 years of age, who's a mother. Her whole world has been turned upside down. She's taken this long journey, maybe on a donkey, for days, but, she may have walked. We don't really know. What a difficult time for her. And now she has this child. They get to this hometown, this Bethlehem, his hometown. There's no place to stay. You know the story and the way things work. And now she goes into labor. Really? Now she goes into labor. God has entrusted her to bring the Savior into the world. And the first place she's going to lay that baby is in a stinking feeding trough for an animal. And she had fear in her eyes. God has asked me to do this. Oh my goodness, what if this baby dies from the filth that's in here? She had fear. Maybe Paul would point us to Jesus Christ himself, the Son of God, lying in a manger. If anybody had the right to complain, it was Jesus, who was God in flesh and perfect, but treated like the worst of criminals. He left the throne of heaven, okay? So you and I could one day be with him. Imagine that. He came here so we could be a part of his family. He would call us his very own. By the way, his own family didn't understand what he was doing. Everybody questioned what he was doing. He was brutally beaten within an inch of his life and killed, as you know. He chose to do that. God chose to bring him to do that. I do a lot of things for you, but I wouldn't give up one of my sons for you. But he did that for us. And Jesus didn't he didn't complain about it one single time. Yeah, he was God in flesh, but he also took on enough flesh. That was a big deal. He was tempted, the Bible says, in every way as we are. He was tempted. The thought was there to complain, but he didn't. He never sinned. So he could be the perfect sacrifice for our sins. And we're to reflect the same kind of joy that he had. Joy is not about good, happy circumstances. It's about his presence in the midst of painful circumstances. And so this season, I just pray you will truly receive the light of God. You'll truly receive that light, and you will give that light. I mean, you be obsessive. Don't cross the line. But appropriately, you spread that light everywhere you can spread it. Those cards give you a natural way to do that. Spread the light. I tell us 60% of people, all people in America, say they would come to church if they're invited. 6 out of 10. Give it a shot. Reflect the light of his Son instead of the darkness. Have you ever heard of something called transference? Okay, transference is a concept in psychology. Sigmund Freud described it this way. Let me show it to you. He said, transference is this. It's the unconscious reflection of feelings from one person to another. Okay? The unconscious, you don't even know you're doing it, reflection of feelings from one person to another. It's amazing people who are hurting for any number of reasons, they'll lash out and hurt other people. I just tell you, when somebody's talking bad about somebody, just count on it. There's something broken inside of them. And they don't even know that they're doing it. They're spreading poison because they themselves are hurting on the inside. And we transfer feelings that we have experienced and we pass it on to other people. We do that with our kids. We do that with our parents. So many people put up with things at work and they come home and I don't have to put up with it now. And that's where trouble comes. God says, no, you've got to live another way. Instead of transferring darkness, reflect the light of God's love. Okay, reflect the light of God's love. Just know how difficult this experience really was. You know the manger scene, you know the manger scene. Doesn't it seem so serene? I love the song Away in a Manger, don't you? The cattle are lowing. What does that mean? Can anybody tell me what that means? What does it mean for a cattle to low? I don't know, but I do know a cow was in the delivery room. Are you with me? Let's keep it real. Understand this scene is not what we make it out to be. It was a tough, tough place. It was dark, but the light filled it up and changed everything. Rose Crawford, here's a picture of this gal. She was blind for 50 years. She was blind. We see a lot of people like this in the Bible, blind from birth. And she was able to have an operation in the hospital in Ontario. After being blind for 50 years, the surgery changed it, and she could see, just like that, as a result of the surgery. All she'd known was darkness, and now, can you imagine, things she'd imagined for 50 years, she could actually see it with her eyes. She'd been in the dark. She'd only imagined it, but now she actually sees it. And here's the amazing thing about her story. For the last 20 years before she had her surgery, they had discovered this surgery that could have given her eyesight. She could have seen 20 years before she did. But she didn't know about the discovery. So she lived in the darkness long enough. Here's what the doctor said, quote, "She just figured nothing could be done about her condition, and she accepted the darkness." Let me say it again. One more time. She just figured nothing could be done about the darkness, and so she accepted the darkness. Have you given up? You say, "I'm just so tired of bringing this to God." You find yourself in a dark place now or in the middle of the night. This is not how God made you to be. He doesn't want you to live that way. It doesn't have to be that way. There's a light that came to give life, okay? It's available for every one of us here. So please, this Christmas and this season, allow that to tee up your life for this next year. Let the light begin to truly change you and the way you do life and your attitude with other people and your relationships. I'm talking about moving from the fear and the anxiety that the world lays on you to you become a dispenser of peace. Don't transfer the bad stuff. You bring the good stuff from God. And instead of transferring bitterness, you have reason to be bitter. Offer forgiveness that Jesus gave in the midst of his torture. You've been hurt with some terrible words. I mean, they've broken you. Those words can kill you. The anger that has broken you, hey, reflect the kindness of Christ instead. Critical spirit around you, it's critical everywhere you are. Some of you, the only time you hear a positive word is when you come to church, all week long at your work and even at your home, maybe. It's criticism, critical. And the only time somebody says, well, good morning to you is when you come to church. When you come to church, you need to assume you're meeting somebody who for the first time this week will see a smile. The world's that broken. So if you live in that kind of environment, what do? You bring joy, you bring encouragement, you bring kindness. Because after all, joy has come to the world. The Lord has come. After the service today, we never have a service here any weekend, and you won't in the future, when there's not an invitation for someone to come out of the dark into the light. And after the service, there'll be people at the table, it's called Starting Point, who would love to go talk with you about next steps as you move toward the light of Christ. There are going to be leaders up here, and women will be up here, men or women. Nobody needs to know what is on your heart. Whatever you need to pray about today, or questions you have about the Bible or about Christ, man, you seek that out today. Some folks here will be here after the service today. Do what you need to do to move toward the light of Jesus Christ.